Hello. I was thinking about the 4 states of consciousness that are defined in the 4th way, which are the sleep state, the waking state, self-consciousness, and objective consciousness. And this is not a correct model because the waking state, which is the one we should be most concerned with because that's the one we can work with, the waking state is not a state. It does not stay the same. The waking state is more like a mode. It's a mode, but it's not a state because it is fluctuating. In the waking state, there are several different types of intelligence that function simultaneously, and they wax and wane in their strength. Sometimes when we are awake, we can be more drowsy. Sometimes we can be sharper. Sometimes we can drift into the voice of the collective society. If we watch the news and so on, we sort of tune ourselves in to the collective mind. And sometimes it can be just me, or just I, if you prefer. And we experience in the waking state many different types of intelligence that function simultaneously. For instance, the 3 centers. The physical center, the emotional center, the mental center. But at a lower level, there are the intelligences of the organs, the liver, the heart, the spleen, kidney, lungs. They're well investigated in the Chinese arts. And then we have our thought stream, our focused thinking. That is another type of intelligence. We also have intuition and various things like that. Insight, inspiration, they are less well defined, and there isn't just a single one of them. There's several different other routes of intelligence. And so the waking state, when we are awake, it fluctuates between these different origins of intelligence. And so it's not really a state. And the path of evolution is to concretize each of these types of intelligence that we experience, because in the overwhelming majority of people, all of these things are unconscious and they flow unconsciously. They change and shift according to external conditions. None of them are owned. Human beings don't really own any of the currents of intelligence that they experience. They are free floating. In fact, I walked past some builders yesterday who had the radio on. It was droning on and on into their minds and sort of tuning them in with this sort of beam, and that keeps them in a certain state. When you listen to the drone of the radio going on and on about the news, it actually holds you in a particular state, and it assists you, because that is the level of human fragmentation. that they need to have a kind of drone. It's almost like a musical instrument that just keeps playing the same note, and that's how they can deal with the fragmentation of so many different voices inside of them. As well as this stuff that I've mentioned, there are also the things about the planetary influences that existed when you were born, which become your astrological type. I'm not really an expert in that, and I find that stuff quite hard to deal with, as it's quite complicated and there are countless different ideas about it. The closest I've got to is to assemble for myself actual photos of the celestial objects and trying to make direct contact myself, because I don't trust all those millions of astrological books, ancient and new. They're just too much noise, too little precision, so I'll just do it myself. But one thing I was thinking this morning is that all that stuff in our society about gender roles, different kinds of genders, and the freedom of people to move outside the traditional gender role. I think what they are doing is simply trying to represent, in this extremely shallow society, they're trying to represent these other parts of us. For instance, you could have a man and a woman where the woman is a fire sign and the man is a water sign, for instance. So astrologically the polarity is reversed, but of course biologically the man is still yang and the woman is still yin. But according to their astrological origins at birth, their polarity is opposite. At that level, you see, we have many different levels where we can contact each other. Our star signs interact together, and then we can have friendships where we have opposites as well. If you're an emotional type, you may find some kind of connection with a mental type, and it's like you kind of exchange from different polarities. And so we can have innumerable types of connections that are based upon our astrological type, or on the functioning of the three centers, or even the functioning of the organs, or the functioning of the chakras, or simply our biological polarity. And because none of this stuff exists anymore in human culture, because the materialistic, scientistic, which really means extremely shallow and insensitive, this culture does not permit any of these other realities to exist. And so there is this attempt to represent these other things in the culture by changing genders and such conversation, because human beings no longer recognize the reality of all this stuff that's inside of us. Gurdjieff said that in this place where all these deep currents are happening, that is not the subconscious but the real person. That's where we really are. and he discounted the normal mental person, the personality. He discounted that. But I would say that they all have their role. The waking mode is assisted by the sun. It seems to be that as the sun rises up from the horizon, it changes our mode. It's almost like nature is trying to wake us up. It's trying to assist us into a higher state of consciousness. That is the waking state. So the situation is very complex. We have many different things happening, and a seeker, somebody who wishes to evolve, has to attempt to awaken and integrate each of these currents of intelligence inside of his soul. Piece by piece, internalizing the power of those intelligences, one by one. Each one is a work. It is like we take this raw material piece by piece and we awaken it and integrate it as part of ourselves. We are very complicated creatures with huge amounts of information flowing through us, coming from a very long journey, and it is unconscious, but there is something that is more conscious inside of us that can begin to do that work. It is a great work, a long work, and a complicated work. And Nietzsche said that life was based upon the will to power, which really should be our journey to internalize all these powers and strands that we currently feel unconsciously, to actually turn them into our power, to take them for ourselves, so that we can own them and use them and be them. And there are many. Okay. A couple of other things. I was reading a psychotherapy book. It's from one of the latest, greatest psychotherapies invented in America. It's been promoted around the world. So I read this book about it, and in the last few chapters, the author of this new psychotherapy wishes to help you if you have a problem with being black. If you're a white person and you have a problem with being black, he can help you to ease that problem, to get rid of your difficulties with this therapy. And also if you have a problem with being an albatross, he can help you sort that out. And what this shows to me clearly is that the mechanical man, the false self, the phony person, is quite capable of doing psychotherapy, doing meditation, getting involved in spirituality, becoming the Pope or the Queen or the President. He's quite capable of doing that. The false self is that cunning, and it will remain false. And the only thing that can change that is the struggle for individuality. And that is the only thing that really counts. Everything else is mechanical, even so-called spirituality, which dies after the light goes out. The only thing that counts is the inner struggle, the great struggle to become an individual.